Okay. Okay. So welcome everybody. I will give a chance to people who are here for the first time. I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself if you'd like, but I don't want to push anybody. So if you'd like to introduce yourself now, would you mind just raising your hand so we can give you a chance? Okay. I don't see hands up, so I'll just proceed and I'll say this is our biweekly meeting for the technology and data analytics team. We have several teams on this effort. 3 of them are about business process improvement. These are asset management team, asset management and asset risk, the CIP, development and planning team, and energy management team. We also have this team for technology, and we have a team for change management and one for workforce and organizational culture. So each one of these teams meets a couple of weeks, and we often also share experience between the teams. So what I will cover today, and it's the agenda is a little bit mixed. It will be maybe a little bit repetitive, some repetition for things who have been with this program. Some of them, like Mike Sweeney, for 5 years, and Zonetta, you're there as well. But we have some new folks, so I think that it might be helpful for them to provide the context, and then talk about the fact that we're going to be starting to look at technology by considering a business process. We have one that Ting Lu from Clean Water Services has been developing. And we're also going to talk about adding other processes so that we can look at other business processes that would make sense to your utility that we could look into and focus on. And then discuss what is the appropriate level of detail for a business process model, show some examples, and then discuss an outline for implementing improvements, because this is very much a hands-on, practical and applied effort, although its origins are in the Water Research Foundation for 4 years, but it is very practical. And at any time, if you have a question, please raise your hand, and Scott will let me know, and I'll stop and we'll discuss. So the framework for this project includes 3 components of value creation in an organization: the people and the organizational culture, which is the people side, the business processes side, and technology. The other key component is the improvement methodology, which has these 6 steps. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the first step, which is to assess system maturity, to see where we are on a scale from 1 to 5. The next steps are to analyze our system state, to design where we would like to be, and then plan improvements, implement them, and then monitor performance. This is not very unusual. There are other frameworks that have similar ideas about the steps and the process. Since this is the group that focuses on technology, it often starts with a desire to have some technology, the word that's in vogue these days is the smart utilities, smart networks, smart cities. So people who are on the implementation side may get a request from the board or their management says, we want to be smart in some ways. So what they need to do is to figure out how the people and the process and technology can be aligned to respond to the business needs that are driven by some performance management metrics and KPIs, and formulated in terms of some business needs. So this is a very simplified diagram to show what are the steps that we would start with. So we're talking about just step number one, this one in the lower left corner, about assessing system maturity and what this really means. So we would typically make one decision up front. Is the scope of the improvement just on workforce and organizational culture? Or are we also trying to improve business processes and technology that would enable these business processes? So in that step, in that case, our first step would be to select the business process. We've so far looked at a number of them. We have a number of case studies that we've looked at, and then get some sense of that business process. Is it complicated, simple, who's involved, and stuff like that. And then get a sense for the capabilities. Are they mature or not mature? If they're not mature, before we move on, we may want to improve the process documentation, better define business needs, and so forth. And then we would look at the assessment of technology maturity. Well, how well is our technology aligned with our needs? So these are the two that I'll talk about today. We had a special webinar on this one on the workforce and organizational culture, but I'm not going to touch it today. It's a whole another piece of work. So I will focus on these two things and then talk about where we go from there. So these maturity assessments would provide us with a 360-degree portfolio of these tools that would help us understand what's going on in our organization with the workforce organization, process, and technology, so that we can also monitor what's going on and implement some changes. So the first one, so the result of all this is you will see that each one of these assessment tools and methods has a number of components that have this range from 1 to 5, 5 being very mature and high capabilities and red being low. So this on the left side are the 7 categories of our workforce and organizational culture maturity model that's been developed over the past year and a half. We have a number of people from different utilities collaborating on this, and we're planning to have some pilot implementation soon. In the upper right corner are the 5 aspects of business process maturity that I'll quickly mention today. And then in the lower right corner, there are these 4 aspects of technology. And these are sensing and collecting and creating data. Are we even collecting the data that we need? How do we manage it? Do we have analytics in place? And then are we providing proper decision support and automation? So you may have been asked, for example, to develop a decision support system, but to look at simply only technology, you might miss some important information. So if you look at the business processes that you're supposed to support, you might find that that business process is not well documented. You might also find that it's a complex process with many people involved, perhaps, and the impact of failure would be significant. And you may also find that the data that this business process would require is not currently being generated. And on the people side, you could maybe find out that the employee engagement is low and the teamwork and collaboration aspect is at low level of maturity, which would all contribute to the success of the project to successfully implement the technology. So what do these things look like? On the process side, there are a number of things that we would look at as an assessment, including, for example, do we have, what are our improvement goals? How important are they? This is just a small snapshot of the spreadsheet. Are we tracking them? Have we defined performance metrics for this process? How are we going to measure success? So the technology part is actually part of the same spreadsheet. They work together. This is an example looking at the layer for data sensing and collection and generation to identify the sources of data, what kind of data does this business process require, what systems are sort of the primary authoritative sources of that data, and then perhaps who's responsible for this organization and so forth. So this would be getting into the technology part, and it's not a survey. On the people side, it's a survey because of privacy and confidentiality. But in this case, when it comes to processes and technologies, it's intended to be used within workshops and meetings and interviews and working sessions to jointly be developed by all the stakeholders. So we would kind of go through this cycle to look at the existing as-is technology by looking at the business process performance and management. Do we have metrics in place? Have we defined business needs? Are we collecting the data we need? Are we managing it properly? Do we have analytics in place? And finally, do we have a good idea of what kind of decisions we need to support to enhance the capabilities of the organization? So this is just to assess what the as-is situation would be. So when we look at these 4 layers, different people would get involved. And it's sort of a rough diagram showing a framework for collaboration where the blue, such as defining business requirements for data and information collection, would mostly done on the user side, the business side, but to assess the maturity capability of current assets or methods or tools, maybe more of a technology person. And then they may want to work, they of course should work together in all of these, but some of these are primarily for the technology people, and some of them are primarily for the business people, so that we can properly define what we're trying to accomplish. So the question is, the information about the business process, how do we find out what the business process is like, and how detailed should this description or documentation or model be? So business process model is not a maturity model. It's used for the second stage, which is analysis. So it's a system model. It is a detailed description of how a process works. And it tells us which measurements are used to manage the process, which metrics are impacted by the process, what decisions need to be made and who makes them with the swim lanes, who's involved in the business process, workflow, what resources may be needed, which technologies and systems. You can see them here on the diagram, identified the systems with these little computer things. And what data is required and where that data resides. So this is sort of the detailed analysis phase after we've looked at the maturity. And this is an example from Grand Rapids for cross-media reporting that they've done, modeled their process as is. And then when we get to the design to be, this is the modified model where that Grand Rapids developed to show how they should be doing things, how they should conduct this business process. So the appropriate level of detail for the business process model really depends on what we're modeling. But in principles, the more complex it is, the more people are involved. If we're talking about CIP or asset management, the more we need this kind of detail. And there's let me see, I'll give you a link later, because there's a folder in our database that provides a lot of resources for developing business models, including guidelines and examples These are examples from a large water agency, and all of these examples are models of different business processes that are related to revenue meters. So for example, just to give you a sense for what they look like, this is what the business process looks for troubleshooting communication issues. And let me just see, where is it? Maybe this will be, so it will show in the swim lanes, this is, operations unit, this is the control system applications development team. What starts this is a daily process, what the activities are, what the systems are that they tap into. This is the AMR, this is WINS billing. This is a system called on-call, databases and documents and so forth. So this is what, sorry.
Oh, Cello, I thought it might be good to, pause and get any feedback, but I just wanted for some newer people, just to emphasize that when we started technology and data analytics team, a lot of people were going into it with the thought that what we were really trying to do was identify technology solutions. But what people are coming to learn is that you really need to deal with the business process, change management. You need to deal with sometimes even workforce related issues associated with the technology, and link the technology to what your requirements are and so forth. So a lot of the pilots that we're starting to develop are beginning to be more integrated with the work that different teams are doing. So the business process teams that Cello mentioned, or change management team, or workforce team. So just to, that's why Cello is kind of going into these other aspects other than talking about technology specifically, just technology, because there are these connections. And when people think about it, they're discovering that they really want to deal with more than just the technology itself.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. I do have a tendency to put my head down and get into the weeds. So the question is that we, what we're doing right now with this team is we're looking at different business processes that we could look at and then say how they use technology, how they could better use technology, what other issues and problems they need to address. So the project that has been defined by this team is the one for prioritizing IT projects. And Ting Lu, who is on the call, I believe,
yes,
is the one who started developing this project. This business process model. But we can also see that it has a connection with the business process team on the CIP side, because our DC Water team on that team is looking at business case evaluation for a CIP. So there are some similarities between these things. The idea that came in more recently was to look also into the process to develop digital asset management plans, which is very heavy on technology, because that's what it means, is to have a living, breathing asset management plan that is all enabled by fairly sophisticated technology. And that has a connection with our asset management and asset risk team. So what we wanted to, don't worry, I'm going to stop speaking soon. So what we wanted to do today is engage folks and get some sense of, would you be interested in looking into the two topics or two processes that we're already working on? Do you have ideas about other things that you may want to look into, like procurement or customer call center, or anything else? So let me just see something. So at this point, I will open it up for discussion and get out of my PowerPoint mode, and we're going to also shift from a monologue to a dialogue. So any thoughts or questions?
Mike or Ting, you may want to, Mike Sweeney and Ting or Scott Parker, who've been, very involved in, this particular team, might want to comment on this context and how your thinking has evolved.
Scott's mic is mute, but we have been having discussions with Kansas City Water. Scott Parker's from Kansas City Water, and about their idea for focusing would for focus business process of focus would be within the CIP realm, and it would be project closeout, looking at as-builts and so forth. So he may be on another line. Oh, there's Scott.
Hey, Cello, how are you?
Good.
Good. Yeah. So I just say that sort of along the same lines, I think the thing that we're noting is the benefit of what we're talking about here around data and technology is that it enables a lot of processes to work more efficiently, hopefully effectively. And with the results, what we're seeing is that it really is a part of every process that we do. So there's a business process model for things like the procurement of technology, but there's pretty much a data and technology element to every piece of every other type of process that we encounter. And Cello mentioned our closeout process. So we and myself and Dan Ott, who also was part of the group for Case and Water, we were looking for something we felt was evergreen as far as a process. So in other words, just a process that every utility goes through. And it seems the ones that we have encountered, including our own, we have a terrible time of closing out projects. And a lot of the issues with closeout of projects is the lack of continuity between data sources, quite frankly, and really misunderstandings between the people. What systems they go in. So we have been on a tour of that process at our utility, and the benefit, I would say, that we're able to pretty effectively address a lot of those issues via technology. But we would not have been able to do that had we not mapped that business process with those technology tools in mind. So I would hopefully, I would recommend to anyone that be something that you consider with any workflow that you work through, which is consider the data, because anymore that's necessary.
Yeah, thanks, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any thoughts from you, Jenny, perhaps? You were the one who was thinking about digital asset management plans.
Not at this time, no.
Okay. Eric Griffin on the energy management. You expect to have technology as an important component, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Cello. Right now there's a fire alarm test going on here, so it's probably not the best time for me to contribute.
Okay, it's okay. Any other thoughts that people would like to share?
So, Cello, this is Deb Rose of Metropolitan Council.
Hi.
I was just talking with a coworker, and he's on the not culture change. What's the other one?
The workforce
change,
and organizational or change management?
Change management.
Yes.
And there's a nice tie and crossover and connection with the technology and change management as we work on looking for a new EAM system.
Yes.
Enterprise Asset Management. And because we're going to have to, that's going to be huge as we, move forward, figure out all the business processes, because currently this is all just within environmental services. We're moving that up to an definite enterprise, meaning all across the council enterprise asset management system. There is going to be a lot of culture change, and this is a nice crossover and connection, I think. And he agreed that this technology and change management would work nice.
Yeah, thank you. Just for the folks who are new, we had a set of 4 webinars planned to communicate what's going on this project. In January, it was on business processes. In February, it was on technology. That's, I think, the one that you have attended. And the third one was on people, workforce and organizational culture. That was in March. And in April, we'll have a session on change management. So it will be, we're looking at things from different angles. We have a number of people from different utilities working on these, these different issues, but we also are trying to now encourage even more peer-to-peer collaboration, not within a certain topic, but also within between different topics, like Scott has mentioned. So any other thoughts about things, maybe from the new folks? Does this make sense, what you're seeing here? Do you have any questions or concerns or comments?
We usually don't have such a shy group.
Yeah, this is usually a fairly raucous team. I may, anyway.
So Cello, I can, talk about the IT prioritization you brought up earlier.
Sure.
So what I found it's being really helpful working with the colleagues here, the team here, to brainstorming ideas and then come up with the process flow saying, this is how we want to do. And I do realize and recognize it's a continuous improvement process.
Yeah.
We have a basic process now. Where we are now is we are establishing more of a collaboration embedded structure. So essentially having IT digital solutions department to be more closely working with the units as what our senior leadership wants us to do. So I'm in the process of working through that process. So that would be something I'm continually interested in, whether it's on the call or offline, that just continue hearing how other utilities are doing. The other one, just at least for us, is now looking to all the data visualization like Scott talked about. So what I like to do is come up with business needs about what the data we're all missing or data gaps, and then also a recommendation to the utility, to the district, saying this is what we need to do, whether it's data management practices or tools or technologies or migration to the cloud. So we're getting to more specific on the technologies. But I'm interested in hearing from others about the process on how to get into this data management, data analytics that utilities are now all need to get more information and insights for each process.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Ding. Thank you, Ting. And we are going to soon start getting into the weeds with that spreadsheet that will be used for looking at maturity assessment, both for the business side and the technology side, including, are we collecting the data we need? Is the data complete? Is it reliable? And so forth. So that sounds really good. So this is an unusually quiet meeting. Usually people compete to share their opinions. So I'm going to have to call on some older troops. Mike Sweeney, any thoughts from you?
Cello, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, I can.
Okay. I'm in the car and been following along. I haven't been able to see the slides safely.
Yeah.
This is a little off the wall, maybe, but just a thought. And it's in a Toho water context, once again.
Yeah.
Been a pattern I think I've been following. Is it possible to deliver of all the assessment tool work that you've been pursuing, to use it for outside professional services in a different way? What I mean by that is that there is a reliance, probably maybe more so at Toho than others that are on the call, and still others that couldn't make it, of outside help. And there are best practices, Scott and I know this, and you do too, and others, of approaching a technology project. We've talked about them a lot, but the thought I had was that maybe we could turn toward a professional service that, say, a utility has used in the past, or even maybe even a bidding, not a bidding process, but a request for qualifications process, and see the evidence that they know what we're talking about here. The run up to particularly the prep work that goes into finding, selecting, determining functional requirements, things like that, but in a different way, more of a wise way. And I'm just laying that out there, hopefully somewhat clearly. We don't need to dwell on it, but just been something that I've thought about. Something else maybe that would be in our toolbox.
Oh, let me just see if I understand. So what you're saying is that we would apply these thoughts to the process of seeking professional services.
It could be, or yeah.
Cut out, Mike.
Yeah, I hope he's safe because he was driving. Okay, let me see. Do we still show Mike? Yeah, we still show him. He's not muted, but maybe we can just give Mike a chance to continue when he gets his signal back. Are there, from the people who are on the call for the first time, anybody has any ideas? Does this sound something that's applicable? And this meeting also is a little bit different because we often have people sharing what they're doing in their utilities, but today we're focusing more on the implementation and the pilot projects that we would like to conduct and that we will conduct related to technology. So any thoughts or comments from some of the new folks? Oh, there's Mike. Hi, Mike. Can you hear us okay, Mike Sweeney? Okay. I let him in, but I don't see Mike. Anyway, this is very unusual. We usually have a problem with people sort of having everybody wanting to say that today it's been a little bit a little bit more quiet than these meetings normally are. Any other thoughts that
No, Mike's back now.
Mike's back? Okay.
Yeah. If you want to.
Hey, sorry about that, Cello. Can you
It's
hear
okay.
me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so the idea was, just to finish it up, I was going too long, I think, is we have partners that help us at Toho, maybe others. We also have some internal capacity to take on this very approach of people, process, and technologies that WISE is honed, and which includes business process mapping and all that kind of thing. But what I'm thinking is, can we extend the capabilities, the toolbox, whatever we want to refer to it, what we're doing at WISE, to make sure those partners have the acumen, for lack of a better word, to deal with us and take advantage of what we're doing in the way of WISE.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And it's a very good question, especially for some of the smaller utilities who are considering to join, because we do have some utilities like DC Water and MCES and or San Francisco, who have significant and substantial capabilities in-house. And I think what you're saying is, how can we augment this so that we can follow these methodologies, but enable our external providers of professional services to help us with this? Am I interpreting it correctly?
That's the essence, yes.
Okay, I think that we're completely open to this as far as project team to work. So the key for excuse me, the key point for our project team is that utility needs to be the ones who select their partners and people they trust and so forth. What we can provide is assistance with documents and methods and information that may help them identify people or firms who have these capabilities. It is
absolutely. It should come from utilities. This is our work, and there's that concern as well to to control that work.
Yes. So what we can do is we can construct sort of example scope of work for an external provider, like a consultant. We can provide that and share this with utilities, and they can tailor it to what they need. We can provide the documents that we already have, like business process modeling guidelines that Mike Barnett has developed, that provide assistance who those who want to do business process modeling. WEF now has a class in business process modeling that they offer those credits. I can't remember what those credits are called. So there are opportunities for training, for artifacts that the project can provide to such a utility. And the key would be that we would support and enable them, and they would be the ones identifying the consultants. We would also, our project team would be quite happy to work with those external consultants that different utilities bring in. And we've had one example of that, Zonetta will remember, where for one specific item, she brought in an external consultant, and we worked with that external consultant closely. One line that we have established so far is that, as you know, Mike, utilities have shared a lot of their internal artifacts and documents, like asset management plans, CIP, strategic plans, and all sorts of things. So the way it is now, consultants would not necessarily have access to those materials. So those would be just for utilities to share among themselves. but there is certainly space, and we can make that easier for utilities to hire external help in order to do this work. And it's a very good idea.
Zanetta, did you have any comments on it since you've worked under that kind of model? You're on mute.
My camera off and didn't take my thing. Sorry about that. Yes, this works really, really well. In fact, our next project that we're going to be working on is asset management of our storeroom, and so we actually started next week, and so we're using outside help. Mr. Haskins, Jamie Decker that you mentioned before, he's going to be our person on that as well. So we've been able to manage it. Just to summarize real quickly, we've been able to manage that quite well to where they're assisting us to move forward, and just giving them the tools that they need, and been able to separate that because we've made it very clear that this is, utility led and the integrity of that, and been able to manage it quite well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Zanetta. Scott, anything else you wanted to share?
No, I think this is a little different kind of, I guess I would ask, even Ting, you've laid out a business process associated with technology, and do you see, and we're using a kind of, here's what we do now versus here's what the future wants to be, and then a change management process to get from here to there. Are you seeing, Ting, in yours that you've developed that these other linkages with the other assessments and tools that we have, that might be useful for the work that you're doing to put together a technology plan? Or maybe Ting left.
I think she had.
Oh, she's there. She's on mute.
She is on mute, but she had a message that she has to take another call, then she'll be right back. Yeah. I just also want to say, for example, from Great Lakes, we have Eric here, but we have other folks from Great Lakes Great Lakes Water, who are considering a specific process of how to manage their gas cylinders. So that will be their process that they will want to pilot and examine in these different aspects, how they're doing in terms of business processes, in terms of technology and so forth. So we intend to use these assessment tools just to get us going, and then get into the models and developing project plans and so forth, and looking at change management.
I think Cello's point is that even though this is data analytics and technology, it doesn't mean that, we're basically starting with a business process, and it can be something that relates to technology, but it can be really any business process where you would have some technology aspects to it. So if Zanetta's dealing with a storeroom and asset management relationships there can be different technologies and tools and software and systems that can definitely link in with it. So it's I think that's what people are finding, is that you don't just do technology or just do business process. You're trying to link those together to get the full benefit of it. So that's what we're kind of discovering as people are moving forward. And we're needing to adapt to that to make sure the case studies and the work incorporates an integrated approach.
Yes. Oh, and I just want to add that you're exactly right, because we're going to be relying on data and technology. All of these intersect. So we'll be relying on and utilizing the expertise of the people like Portland Water and everyone else to be able to help even in this sector too. So we're being involved with this for a long time. I've seen that every focus area that we've done, that there's some intersection, and been able to utilize that expertise in each of one of those areas to help with every project. So I just want to tell you, it's been really helpful for us, and it's been a lifesaver. So thank you much for all their expertise and willing to share. And I'll shut up for today. Thank you.
It's okay. Thank you very much, Sonetta. I just want to do one final invite and ask people if they want to have any other thoughts to share. I will follow up with an email to our WISE partners with to stimulate this conversation of which business processes we're going to select. We're going to then that utilities will select, and then we're going to proceed to address these three aspects, people, process, technology, on these examples to result then in case studies that can be shared with others. So just one final shout out to see if any folks have any other questions or concerns. Okay. All right. Well, let me just then conclude the recording. This is very unusual